In 1957, the government of Australia announced a competition to design a new opera house for the city of Sydney. The winning architect, a 38-year-old Dane named Jorn Utzon, submitted a design so radical that the engineering to build it did not yet exist. The original budget was 7 million Australian dollars. The projected completion date was 1963. The opera house opened in 1973, 10 years late. The final cost was $102 million, 1,400% over budget. You have heard this story before on this channel, in our episode on optimism bias. But this is a different episode, because the planning fallacy is a different phenomenon, related, but operating at a level that affects not just mega projects and governments, but your kitchen renovation, your morning commute, your homework, and the email you promised to send by end of day. The optimism bias says, I believe good things are more likely to happen to me. The planning fallacy says something more specific and more dangerous. I know exactly how long this will take, and I am almost certainly wrong. In 1979, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky identified the pattern and gave it a name. They observed that people consistently underestimate the time, cost, and effort required to complete tasks, even tasks they have done many times before, even when they have direct personal experience of those tasks taking longer than expected in the past. The fallacy is not about unfamiliar challenges. It is about familiar ones. You have been late to every dentist appointment for 5 years, yet every time you leave the house, you believe today you will arrive on time. You have never finished a work project on the original deadline, yet every new project begins with a timeline you are confident you will meet. This is what makes the planning fallacy uniquely maddening. It is immune to experience. You can fail the same way 100 times and still believe the 101st will be different. In 1994, psychologist Roger Buehler and colleagues at Wilfrid Laurier University ran what has become the defining study of the planning fallacy. They asked college students to estimate when they would complete their senior thesis. The students made 3 predictions: their best-case scenario, their most likely estimate, and their worst-case scenario. On average, students predicted they would finish their thesis in 33.5 days. The actual average completion time was 55.5 days. They took over 60% longer than their most likely estimate. And here is the devastating detail. Even the worst-case predictions were exceeded. Only 30% of students finished their thesis by their own worst-case deadline. They were not just optimistic. They were optimistic about their pessimism. Their imagined disasters were less bad than reality. Buehler replicated this across dozens of tasks: tax returns, holiday shopping, computer assignments, apartment cleaning. The pattern held universally. People overestimated how quickly they would finish, even when specifically instructed to consider everything that might go wrong. To understand why, Kahneman described the distinction between 2 fundamentally different ways of thinking about a future task. The first is the inside view. When you picture a task, you imagine the specific steps you will take, in the specific order you will take them, and you mentally simulate the process going smoothly. You see yourself writing the report, paragraph by paragraph, with no interruptions, no confusion, no rewrites. The inside view is essentially a movie of your best performance. The second is the outside view, when you ignore the specifics of your situation entirely and instead ask, how long do projects like this typically take? What is the base rate? If 100 people attempted a similar task, how many finished on time? The inside view is seductive, personal, and almost always wrong. The outside view is boring, impersonal, and dramatically more accurate. A couple sitting at a kitchen table planning their bathroom renovation. The contractor says 4 weeks. They have read online that bathroom renovations take 4 to 6 weeks. They schedule a dinner party for week 5, confident the work will be done. 8 weeks later, the bathroom is still a construction zone. The tile delivery was delayed by 10 days. The plumber discovered corroded pipes behind the wall. The permit inspector found a code violation. The custom vanity arrived in the wrong color. None of these problems were exotic or unforeseeable. Every contractor in the country has encountered each of them dozens of times. But the couple did not ask, how long do bathroom renovations actually take, including problems? They asked, how long will our bathroom renovation take, assuming things go more or less as planned? The inside view. The best case movie. The 4-week fantasy. A software development office tells the same story at a different scale. A team of engineers estimates that a new feature will take 3 weeks to build. The product manager schedules the release for 4 weeks out, adding a 1-week buffer. 7 weeks later, the feature is still not ready. The original estimate did not account for the legacy code that needed refactoring, the dependency on another team that was behind schedule, the bug that took 3 days to diagnose, the design review that required a complete rethink of the user interface, or the week the lead developer was out sick. The software industry has measured this with painful precision. A landmark study by the Standish Group, known as the Chaos Report, has been tracking software project outcomes since 1994. Their data consistently shows that the majority of software projects exceed their original timeline and budget. Large projects fail at dramatically higher rates. The software industry responded by inventing an entirely new methodology, agile development, which is, at its core, a systematic attempt to defeat the planning fallacy by replacing long-range estimates with short, iterative cycles. Instead of predicting the future for 12 months, agile teams predict the future for 2 weeks at a time. The inside view is less wrong when the horizon is shorter. But the planning fallacy is not limited to professionals estimating complex projects. It operates every single morning when you decide what time to leave the house. A commuter in any major city knows that the drive to work takes, on a good day, 35 minutes. She sets this as her expected travel time. She leaves the house 38 minutes before she needs to arrive, giving herself a 3-minute buffer. She is late to work approximately 3 days out of 5. Because the 35-minute drive is the best case, the actual distribution of travel times includes the day there is construction on the highway, the day an accident blocks 2 lanes, the day it rains and traffic slows by 20%, the day a school bus stops repeatedly on her route. The median travel time, the time that accounts for the full range of possibilities, is probably 45 minutes. But she anchors on the best case, because the best case is the one her memory stores most vividly. The smooth, fast, uninterrupted drive is a cleaner narrative than the messy average. Academic research confirms this at scale. A 2003 study by Buehler, Griffin, and Ross found that people's predictions of task completion time corresponded closely to their best-case scenarios and bore almost no relationship to their actual past experience with similar tasks. People who were habitually late predicted arrival times as if they had never been late in their lives. Even professionals whose entire job is estimation fall prey to the fallacy. A 2002 study of major rail projects across 20 countries, conducted by Bent Fleavbjerg, the same researcher featured in our Optimism Bias episode, found that passenger rail forecasts were overestimated by an average of 106%. Costs were underestimated by an average of 45%. These were not amateur guesses. They were produced by teams of professional engineers, economists, and consultants. The planning fallacy does not respect expertise. Tax season in the United States provides a nationwide annual demonstration. The IRS consistently reports that millions of Americans file for extensions every year. Most of these taxpayers knew in January that taxes were due in April. They had over 3 months, and yet by April, millions are not ready. They did not procrastinate for 3 months straight. They procrastinated for 2.5 months, then planned to do their taxes in the final 2 weeks, then discovered that gathering documents, locating receipts, and navigating tax software took 3 times longer than they expected. The planning fallacy and procrastination are collaborators. Procrastination delays the start, and the planning fallacy ensures that even the late start is based on an unrealistically short estimate. Event planning reveals the fallacy operating under social pressure. A couple plans a wedding with a 12-month timeline. The first 8 months feel spacious. Decisions are made slowly. Then, 4 months out, they discover that the caterer needs a final count. The florist needs specific arrangements. The seating chart requires a diplomatic skill set they do not possess. The wedding party needs outfits coordinated, and the playlist has not been discussed. The final month is a controlled panic. Tasks that were estimated at a quick call turn out to require 3 calls, 2 emails, and a meeting. The inside view of wedding planning. We have a whole year collides with the reality that a year contains roughly the same number of available decision-making hours as 3 to 4 months, once work, sleep, and existing commitments are subtracted. The home buyer's timeline fallacy is equally universal. A family decides to buy a house. They estimate the process will take 3 months, a month to search, a month in escrow, and a month to move in. 9 months later, they are still in their rental apartment, having lost 2 bidding wars, waited 6 weeks for a mortgage approval that was supposed to take 2, scheduled and rescheduled inspections, negotiated repairs, and spent a month finding movers during peak season. Every step took longer than the inside view predicted, and each delay cascaded into the next, because interdependent processes compound delays rather than absorb them. This cascading effect is the hidden multiplier of the planning fallacy. In complex projects with many sequential dependencies, each individual step might be only slightly underestimated, by 10 or 20%. But the errors do not cancel out. They accumulate. A 10-step process where each step is underestimated by 15% will finish over 4 times later than planned when the delays compound through dependencies. This is why megaprojects fail with such consistency. The same iron law of megaprojects we discussed in our optimism bias episode. But it is also why your weekend errand list, which contained 8 quick tasks, consumed the entire Saturday and still was not finished by dinner. The corporate world provides perhaps the most expensive demonstrations. A pharmaceutical company estimates that a new drug will move from clinical trial to market approval in 3 years. The average actual timeline for drug development, according to data from the Tufts Center for the Study of Drug Development, is over 10 years. The original 3-year estimate was not a lie. It was the inside view, the mental movie of a trial that runs smoothly, a regulatory review that proceeds without complications, and a manufacturing process that scales without obstacles. The defense contractor who promises a new fighter jet in 7 years and delivers it in 15. The city government that begins a subway extension with a 10-year timeline and opens it in 22. The startup founder who tells investors the product will launch in 6 months and is still iterating 18 months later. Each one is starring in their own inside view movie, and each one is genuinely surprised when reality does not match the script. So how do you defeat a bias that is immune to experience and resistant to expertise? Kahneman's prescription is brutally simple. Abandon the inside view. Do not ask, how long will this take me? Ask, how long does this type of task typically take people like me? Find the base rate. Use the outside view. If you are renovating a bathroom and the contractor says 4 weeks, search for the actual average duration of bathroom renovations, including delays. The number you find will likely be 6 to 8 weeks. Use that number. Ignore the movie in your head. If you are writing a report and you believe it will take 2 days, recall how long your last 3 reports actually took. Not how long you planned for them to take, but how long they actually took. Use the longest of the 3 as your estimate. You will still probably be wrong, but you will be less wrong. Flubier's reference class forecasting, the same technique we described in the optimism bias episode, is the most rigorous application of this principle. Instead of estimating from the inside, you build a database of comparable projects and use their actual outcomes as your baseline. Add contingency for the specific risks of your project, but start from the outside view, not the inside one. The most practical personal defense is what psychologists call the implementation intention. Instead of planning in abstract terms, specify exactly when, where, and how each step will be completed. Not, I will work on the report this week, but I will write the introduction on Tuesday from 9 to 11 in the conference room. The specificity forces a confrontation with the actual time available, which is almost always less than the inside view assumes. And perhaps the most important defense of all is simply this. When you catch yourself thinking, "This will be quick," pause. That sentence is the planning fallacy announcing itself. Nothing is ever as quick as you think it will be. The smooth, uninterrupted, obstacle-free version of any task that plays in your imagination is not a plan. It is a fantasy. The plan is what happens when you add the traffic, the delays, the complications, the human beings who do not respond to emails on time, and the universe that does not care about your schedule. The Sydney Opera House was supposed to take 6 years and cost $7 million. It took 16 years and cost $102 million. And the architect, the one who drew the original timeline on a napkin, was not incompetent. He was not dishonest. He was human. He was watching the inside view movie. And the movie, as always, was a beautiful lie.